hip hop soul in the crowd. Yeah.
All right, everybody, welcome back. A special Robin Stew show. Roberto is asleep. He's got to go work gas lines in New Jersey. It's exciting. But I'm staying up late. I'm burning the midnight oil with my good friend, very regular guest of this program, these airwaves, host of the Spiro Avenue show, self-eponymously titled Justin Spiro. Great Spartan. How are you doing, sir?
I mean, using the big words right out of the gate, honestly, that's just great. That's like
I know
that's
a
like a
guy.
mouthful.
I got a friend up in New York who he uses on his show very large $10 words to convey 2 cents, ideas. But yeah, so I'm just trying to rip him off. But yeah,
No, that's
man.
good. That's great. I get accused of, trying to be too highbrow, which I've never at any point thought like, how can I word this to sound like snootier or more highbrow? But it's just, I'm just using words like in my brain. And if that makes me a snob, I guess. But yeah, you were right out of the gate, which is good. I'm glad that you're raising the intellectual bar here. I feel flattered by your doing that. But yeah, it's good to be back. And I feel like I'm going to have to start paying for my own bandwidth on your show. I've been here. I got to be one of like the top 10 guests at least. You're like, I'm like
I think your Castellani status. You're certainly maybe at least Tony Paul status.
Tony's got the lead, so you got to flip those. Actually, Tony's
okay. I got to flip those. Well, Chris has
Yeah.
been making enough appearances. Do we count the spaces?
Oh, if we count the spaces, Chris has got like a 30-point lead. Yeah. So that's But we digress. We digress. So I've derailed your thing already. I apologize.
No, I wanted to, before we're going to talk Michigan State, we're going to actually give a Michigan State preview. And on this show, I'm a Michigan State guy. I want to talk Michigan State. Roberto's got his Rutgers. I don't know. He's going to pull some guy off the Jersey Turnpike. They're going to talk Rutgers. It's going to be beautiful. Tough times. Big game against Hofstra. We'll highlight that. But I wanted to pitch, though, that for folks that have not listened to the Spiro Avenue show, I think Detroit goes under the radar for great sports cities. It's really a very contentious, very, very good sports city. And you do a great job covering all the teams: hockey, baseball, basketball, football, college, obviously. And you get into other things, and I think your tweet today, you're branching out. Larry Fitzgerald was scheduled or something. Where can people find the show? And just give a quick plug for the show, because I enjoy watching it every Thursday.
I appreciate it. Honestly, kind of wherever you get your podcasts, the answer is yes, you can find us there. So wherever that may be, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we're all over the place. Obviously audio form only in those cases, but my preferred format for us, if I'm being self-critical, is YouTube, just because, you have the full video there. But we're Facebook Live, Twitter Live at my Twitter account. So really kind of anywhere you can find any media, we're going to be in your face and hopefully doing a good job for you.
Yeah, it's good stuff. The week's already passed by the time this has come out. What do you got planned for the most recent show?
You mean the one coming up on Thursday?
Yes.
It's funny. I'm halfway through the prep, and I can't officially announce it yet because I'll give you a hint that it's a female, so that narrows it way down, and it's a first time guest here. She hasn't been on here before, but there's a 5% chance she may have to reschedule. So I can't announce it yet because I don't want to spoil it.
That makes sense.
It is a relatively young up-and-comer broadcaster, but a pro's pro, and a female who will hopefully be making her debut on Thursday, but if not, very soon. So I apologize, I can't tease my own show better for this Thursday, but I'm really looking forward to the whole, really next couple months. We don't have any others locked in except Graham Couch has promised me a date in August, so we're excited.
I'll be tuning in.
That has been like years and years in the making. We're going to be doing a lot of, obviously, college football, NFL a little bit after that. So I'm really excited. It's going to be sort of the heat up to the prime time for people that do like what we do. As you know, I'm preaching to the choir there. So I'm really looking forward to it. I enjoy summer, but it's more of like a let's go in the pool type thing. It's not a great sports period, but especially when your baseball team sucks, and we'll get to that later. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next 2 months after, as soon as that calendar turns, we're going to be rolling.
And I'm actually excited for this college football season. I'm excited for every college football season. But yeah, I mean, I just got done talking for 25 minutes about the MAC. So, I'm excited. I'm ready to go. It seems like the general national media, you look at Phil Steele, you look at ESPN, for whatever they are, just generally reading the local newspapers, it just seems like the media is really down on this Michigan State team. But there's a lot of talent here. We talked about Keon Coleman leaving, Peyton Thorne leaving, and we talked about that about a month or two ago. Now, this team, as we start into the season, what are you feeling? Positive, optimistic, pessimistic? Where are you? In the middle somewhere?
Here's what I'll say. My take on this whole thing is that it's bizarre how strongly people feel about their takes. And this is not even a Michigan State specific issue. You could say the same thing for Ohio State, Georgia, a number of schools around the country, just to varying degrees. It's the uncertainty at quarterback, which is in professional sports and team sports by far the most important position. I mean, people talk about goalie in hockey, which is way up there. Quarterback in football is it. I mean, it's the only position where you get a touchdown moving on the point spread. Any other position, get a Barry Sanders in his prime go down, it's worth like a point. So when you don't know who your quarterback is even going to be, at least Ohio State has some clarity on who their guy's going to be. Not 100%, but it seems to be it's going to be McCord, right? We don't even know who the quarterback's going to be. And once we have that decision in East Lansing, we don't know how good they're going to be. So I have to make 2 leaps to even get to a good place. I have to pick one that I think is going to win. And then I have to make a projection on how those 2 guys are, which of those 2 guys are going to do well, whoever I pick. So I'm baffled by this, they definitely can do this. They definitely can do that. It's such a variable. We have no idea. So with that said, the 4.5 number, I know some books have it at 5 with a little bit of a different juice line, all that stuff. But I think kind of the standard is 4.5 and a little extra juice to go over. So let's call it 4.5. It's the same thing it was in 21. They won 10 games. Now 11, but for betting purposes, it's 10 because the bowl game didn't count. So they won 10 games with a 4.5 over under. So we don't have to go that far in the rear view mirror to see this program led by this entire staff. It's almost identical, more than doubling their projection. I would be very surprised, as difficult as that schedule is, if that under hits. I'd be shocked, honestly. 4-8 would be a horror show, and there's going to be a lot of big questions going on up there if that were to take place. I just don't think it's going to happen, even with the tough schedule. The biggest thing for me, it's like after having a really bad game, the real champions, real competitors want to get back out there like that night. They don't even want to wait the next day. I'm just excited to get 2022 out of my mouth, that taste out of my mouth as fast as possible. So thank God that we're coming up and we're near the horizon here.
That Indiana game is going to go down as one of the more disgusting.
On so many
I hate
levels.
to bring it up. It's just
every time
you brought up 2022, and that's like, ugh.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, because as bad as last year was, and it's indefensible, even had they won that game, as bad as it was, they still should have been a bowl team. They still should have gone to a bowl. And you have a chance then at a winning record. You could also go 6-7, have a losing record, but you have a chance to have a winning season still, as opposed to clinching a losing season. That is going to go down as, in terms of in a vacuum, that's got to be one of the 3 or 4 worst losses ever. Now, it was in a lost season, so it wouldn't make the list not in a vacuum. I would gladly rather have, a lot of games back that meant more, even, Nebraska in 2015. But I at the end of the day, that should have been a bowl team as bad as things were. And it doesn't get much worse than that. That was an extra point. Did you agree with me? Because I actually tweeted this, and this will be the last thing I say about Indiana, but you brought it up.
Yeah.
I tweeted in real time. You could pull it up. I tweeted in real time just do the quarterback hike 2 yards to the right and kneel it down thing. Like, don't even try to run a play when you're setting up for that end of game field goal. Don't risk a fumble or a bad hand, exchange or whatever. And I mean, Elijah Collins took the brunt of it, and he admitted it was his fault and he hit the wrong hole. He was trying to make a play, but isn't it on the coaches to have him the quarterback just jog over to the right and go down and set up the easy chip shot?
I think this is a really good starting point, because it illuminates a problem I have with Mel Tucker. And he is, I mean, I have my shrine, I have my candles, I have this, I love Mel Tucker and the same reason you love Mel Tucker, which is he's a breath of fresh air in a turbulent, turmoil-filled college football landscape. However, I have been in the stands. I have been watching on TV, and quite frankly, his game management skills and some of the things he does in game are very lackluster, and he is still learning how to be a head coach in the game. And that's what a lot of people get confused with college, especially, is that you get a person like Mario Cristobal. Mario Cristobal is just standing watching the game on the sidelines, right? He's not calling anything. He does not know how to coach, right? He's a recruiter. He's a system guy. He's a program guy. He'll build a program with talent and sell you a boat and all that good stuff. He don't know how to coach. He does not know. He's watching the game. So do you have a guy like that, or do you have a guy like a Kirby Smart, a Nick Saban, a tactician, somebody who knows how to build a program, but also in game can make adjustments and do things like that? I hate to say it. I think Harbaugh's like in the middle, somewhere in between there. We'll get to him eventually one day. Last time I'm bringing that school up, but realistically, I'm still concerned that Mel is still finding his footing as a coach. And that is a perfect example of one of the times last year where, in the past 2 years, really, that I'm shaking my head going, huh? What was the call? That went through your headset and you called that? That was good. You gave the big thumbs up.
Yeah, I mean, this will be interesting to see, because I mean, even in 21 halftime, or going into halftime against Rutgers, Coughlin misses a field goal.
I was there for it. Yep.
That whole thing was like, I mean, they won. It ended up being okay, but that whole thing was a cluster F. I don't know if I always forget if I can swear on your show. I do.
No, you absolutely can let it rip, because I was watching that and I'm just like, what are we doing here? What is the play call? What are we doing?
Well, and you got away with it then, and then homecoming Wisconsin, they blew that too, and they got away with another one. So, and then I'm sorry, it's different, but the Indiana game, just that decision to do anything other than the quarterback little shuffle, that is a coaching decision to hand it off to the running back. I get, and people push back on me saying, oh, what do you if you can't execute a simple handoff, and even after they took it off the hash and all that stuff, it's still an easy field. All true, all valid. Everyone that yelled at me was actually completely spot on. But my take was, your kicker's bad going in. The weather, I'm pretty sure the weather was kind of crappy. It
was like raining and windy.
Yeah. It was a wet, just crap game. You can't, the coach knows he doesn't have a kicker. So you can't be like, oh, it's not the coach's fault. The guy couldn't make a kick. The coach knew that going in, that was a volatile situation at best. I just think your job as the coach is to put your team in the best position to succeed. I said it in real time before it blew up in our face. Just do the little thorn thing, like the little, quarterback 3 steps, go down. You're right in front. This is a kicker that has all sorts of problems if he's anything but dead straight center. Patton was such a mess. But I think that's, off the top of my head, 3 games where that's basic stuff, man. I mean, that was basic game management stuff. Very easy. Any 12-year-old playing Madden could have done a better job. And, I can't think of any examples where and I might be forgetting one, to be fair. I didn't even think about this coming in to tonight, but can you think of any examples where Mel Tucker was a master chess player and, out coached a guy or made adjustments? I think he has had the team better prepared, from a fitness level. That was the big story going into Miami in 21. He gets credit for their wins. There's other aspects of coaching and being, especially the CEO of a college program. But I mean, specifically, like, this thing was beating us to death and he made an adjustment and it got better. I mean, we kind of
what? It's honestly, it's funny you say that, because I think you saw that his first season. That's why I was so excited, is because on difficulty level for the COVID year, difficulty level 10, he's maxed out.
Yes.
Expert level, you look at that Michigan game, and he outcoached the Michigan defense. Now, Michigan did play into that a little bit. I mean, they were very reluctant to adjust and, switch up their defense. And Rocky Lombardi, shout out Rocky Lombardi and Northern Illinois beating Boston College week 1. But, you see the Northwestern game. I think the Illinois game last year, when you have less talent on the field than the other team, and he's out coaching and making key decisions, I see glimmers. That's why it's like, maybe he's just learned, because he didn't get much time at Colorado before he got that one season, and then it's like we're on to the next.
The game management stuff is egregiously bad. I mean, you're kind of like, I mean, not you. We're talking about kind of a couple of different things under the same umbrella. Mm-hmm. At no point is the game management, like clock, late game management, been good ever. I mean, it just that either wasn't relevant or, there wasn't any really managing to do. Like, what 2-minute drill really existed?
See Dan Campbell.
That's a whole other can of worms. You'll have to have me on for a separate hour for that. I have a lot of thoughts on the Lions.
But similar, right?
Well, no, there's
similar in terms of he cannot manage a game, right?
Dan Campbell's problem is he's trying to be Mr. Rah testosterone. Like, I don't think Mel Tucker I think he's just been bad at it. I don't think he's trying to prove it. Campbell, I don't know. I think it's more of a function of personality, and he's trying to be a hard ass to a fault.
It's a different game, the NFL and college.
Yeah, and I think Campbell's actually gotten better, but the Tucker thing, I've seen him. I'm a huge Tucker guy. I mean, you already prefaced that. So, and I have no lack of faith in him. I'm really no more shaken. I mean, than I was 2 years ago. I'm still a big believer. So I can't say my overall belief is shaken, but that's got to get better, because the problem is in 21, it didn't really matter all that much. Like, they were in control of most of the games that they won. Michigan, obviously an exception, but, they handled Northwestern. They handled Miami. They handled, Youngstown State was a little bit dicey for 5 seconds inexplicably, but, Nebraska, maybe they stole it. But for the most part, they kind of, like, he just had to stay out of the way when he has been really needed to manage these situations where you need the coach to call the timeout 6 seconds earlier rather than later. That's been 0 for 3, 0 for 4 in terms of him playing it right. I will say, to use the most extreme favorable example, Andy Reid has been getting crushed for his management and clock management and game management issues his entire career. He was horrifyingly bad his first at that specific metric, like for 10, 12 years. I mean, like everyone considered him a bottom 5 game manager at the end. Now, he was a brilliant play caller. I'm not saying it's apples to apples with Mel Tucker. I mean, Andy Reid may be the best play schemer of all time, but in that one component, which is Mel Tucker's Achilles heel so far, I would argue, we have seen coaches get better. I hate a guy making this much money learning on the job, but in any on any point, any level, but we are still human. I don't care how much you're getting paid. And, people get better when they do stuff. But man, if this thing gets rolling again at any point, if you blew the Wisconsin game, whatever, the season sucks anyway. If you blew that Indiana game as they did, whatever, the season sucks anyway. If this nonsense happens, like, and costs you a Big Ten championship or a berth to the game or whatever, or a game against Michigan, God forbid, that's where this isn't so cute anymore.
Yeah, and you know, overall, I think we could do a whole show on Mel Tucker, but overall, aside from the game management part, I think we both trust in his vision to build the program, in the
100%.
vision for where Michigan State needs to be. Hopefully, I think this is the last we have to have the last season of Jay Johnson, Scotty Hazelton. It's got to come together. It has got to come together from the OC and DC perspective. And we'll start on the offense, because I'll open-ended question. What's the best case scenario for this offense? What's the worst case scenario for this offense?
At no point do I think Michigan State in the next 10 years, you never say never ever, but
yeah,
I don't see any time in the near, even moderate future will Michigan State be a high octane offense. I don't think it's the program ethos. I don't think it's what their bedrocks are. People say, oh, you'll never be able to, even if you wanted to. Michigan State could sell out, recruit heavy offense, and be a run and shoot team if they wanted to. They're a good enough program to focus on one side of the ball. That's never going to happen. So I don't think, if we're talking best case scenario, I don't think they're ever going to be a top 10 offense, even in their best years, a top 8-10 offense. So, but I could see them getting into a top 25 range. You have a lot of, again, we already touched on the quarterback situation and the question mark there, but Nathan Carter, transfer running back, man, he looks pretty good to me. He looked pretty damn,
and he almost got 1,000 yards on a UConn team that, when you watch UConn last year, if you're a sicko that belongs in a home,
Jack McCabe. Sorry, Jack, that's my buddy, but.
Oh no, well, I was right there watching UConn too as well. They had no real passing threat. It was all play action and designed, and you saw Nathan Carter still almost get 1,000 with 8 in the box. He's got talent. They bring in Jared Mangum from USF, who had a pretty rock solid career at USF as well. You have Berger returning. Running back seems strong, but in a scenario this season where, let's even say they're top 40 in terms of offense, is that heavy run, or do you think that means we have a quarterback approximating something close to what Peyton Thorne did last year?
Oh man, that's not that good.
19 and 11 is still, for college football, I mean, it's still probably middle of the pack in terms of.
Believe me, you're preaching to the choir there. It's the biggest myth in the world that Peyton Thorne just sucked last year. When you say like something approximating, I'm thinking like 10 or 15% worse than that. And I'm like, man, if that happens, there's no way you're going to be a top 40 offense. I mean, I'm not saying you'll be atrocious, but if you're even one turn or something, it wasn't a good offense last year at all. So you need to get to last year's Peyton Thorne level or better if you want any hope of being in that top 40 range. What I'll say is, and I am biased, it's not just because he's been on my show, but my inherent biases tend to be, I'm a pedigree guy. I don't always go for the higher recruit. I'm a Spartan, for the love of God. Like, we have the chip on our shoulder, and I respect the lower star guys, but as a default tiebreaker, I kind of like the guy that's a little more esteemed coming in. I'm just more of a Hauser guy. I like both kids. I like how they profile as leaders and players. I think they could both be good, Power 5 quarterbacks in this country, but I'm a Hauser guy. Hauser brings a little bit of moxie that Thorne doesn't. I think he's got a little bit of FU to him that Thorne doesn't. And he's just got a better arm. He's just a better arm talent. So if you get Hauser in here, and I think it'll be, some kinks at first, but if he is what I think he can be, by the second half of the year, I think you could be functioning as a top 35, top 40 offense. If you get any run attack at all, even better than that. And that's the thing. I just think there's so many variables. I don't think Nathan Carter was at anywhere near 1,000 yards. Am I crazy? I think he
was at like 960.
But I think that's like his combined 2 years. The stat that I read was like he was near 1,000, but if you combine, because he had like an injury issue last year, did he not?
He had a huge
yeah. So his but you're not wrong, because like if you look at his carries in his 2 years there, it still is what, like 70 or 80 less than Kenneth Walker had in 1 year at Michigan State. And I mean, he basically did have 1,000-yard season if you look at
because it was like the first or second game, and then
yeah. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't like having an aneurysm on the air or something. I'm like, I don't think
that's fair.
But no, your point is exactly the same though. He had 1,000 yards in like less than a season of workload. So he is, a guy that can absolutely be at that level. And I know they really are high on him up there. Obviously not quite to the Kenneth Walker, preseason hype levels where everybody up there was like saying, holy shit. Like no one up there was that surprised by Kenneth Walker. That's the thing that's so funny. People are like, oh, lightning in a bottle, aside from the fact that that's absurd on its face and he gets credit for targeting him. Like they knew up there, the coaching staff, that, I mean, maybe not that he was going to be the Walter Camp winner, but that this guy's going to be unbelievable. It's a little bit more muted for Nathan Carter, but that's not an insult. I mean, it's muted to the highest degree it's ever been. It's a notch below that, but they really like that kid. It's going to come down to that quarterback situation. But if you're talking best case scenario, I can see them being around like the 30 to 35th best offense. And that would be fine. I mean, that would be very good actually for where they're at and with how many new pieces are coming in.
And I'm going to guess if we go back to the Kenneth Walker season, that season was predicated on the run. I mean, it was run first and second, and we'll leak out to the tight end, or every once in a while you get a big explosive play out of the wideouts, but it was generally 15 and in for the most part. If the running game's going, do these wideouts, losing Keon Coleman hurts, but he'll do great things at Tallahassee, but you have a group of guys and Trey Mosley and Fitzpatrick, Alante Brown. There's like 17 other guys. Antonio Gates Jr., shout out to him. There's a ton of talent that's just like, yeah, I mean, who knows? Do you feel like that it's necessary? Like one of those guys will break out? Have you heard anything? Or is it fine that we just have maybe 3-4 guys catching 400 yards, 450 over the season, plus 27 tight ends?
Oh, yeah, that was the big joke last year. I mean, call me naive. For whatever reason, I just never really worry about receivers at Michigan State. It's not a historically like legendarily great high octane offense program, but this is in terms of college, I'm not talking about pro NFL factory. I mean, in terms of college, like the 9th or 10th best receiving wide receiver score in the last 50 years. I mean, we always have good guys. Honestly, I don't think that's going to be that big of a problem. There's enough talent in that room where you only really need 3 pass catchers to be okay. I mean, like high-end guys. You need other guys to contribute. But like if you have 3 guys, whether it's 2 receivers and a tight end or 2 tight ends and a wide receiver, if you got 3 guys that are threats downfield and can handle the ball, you want at least 1 deep threat ideally, you can function. I think there's going to be 3 guys that are good pass catchers out of this group, and probably a lot more. Of course, I'd rather have Keon Coleman than not have Keon Coleman. That goes without saying. And I think he's the most purely talented guy that was in that room. I just think that's the least of their problems. They just have to focus on the quarterback and setting him up to succeed. That's everything for this thing. And Kim and Hauser, they're just different, man. I mean, Hauser's is got more of a gun. He's a little bit trunkier. I think he's a little bit better equipped to take hits in this conference. They can both move. I think Kim, from what I've seen, it's so limited. So I wouldn't take my scouting report to the bank because it is limited. It's watching practice and talking to the staff up there. But I think Kim at this point is a little bit more comfortable in the pocket, feet a little bit better in the pocket, moving side to side and going through progressions. That's something that gets better with time, and Hauser's had less of it. But, I think that's going to come down to the quarterback situation and nurturing that. These receivers are going to be good. As long as the ball is getting to them in a decent radius, there's plenty of talent there. It's the least of their problems. And I feel the same way about the running back room. Honestly, the offensive line and the quarterback situation are going to be the biggest questions. Doesn't mean that they're going to be bad. I feel less confident in knowing what they're going to look like and how they project.
Going into last year, the O-line, I was really concerned about if one guy gets hurt, what does this thing look like? And that ended up happening, and it didn't. It could not get any push off the ball, but did protect Thorne adequately. He wasn't getting sacked 40 times last year.
Yeah, that's
maybe some hurries.
What were the no, his sack rate wasn't insane. I think he got sacked like 17 or 18 times, but it's not, as you're a smart football guy. I know I'm preaching the choir there, but it goes so beyond that. Like, I'm just thinking, I haven't looked at any of the analytics beyond his sacks and stuff.
I'd like to see what the numbers were on the hurries.
He was under direct. There was some QB hurries mixed in there. And the one thing I'll say, and I can already, if anybody in my friendship circle watches this, are going to already be texting me. I can't wait for this, but you're a little bit too mean to Thorne there with the 21. I got to defend him a little bit, saying it was so run heavy. Thorne had more pass attempts in 21 than Cook did in any year except his senior year. And, I think he had him by like 20 or, basically like an average of like 1.5 more attempts.
I think what I meant to say was that they couldn't get any run. So even though they were trying to run, there was no establishment. There was no push from the offensive line.
I'm talking 21. You did say that, but I'm talking earlier. You said, it was so predicated on Kenneth Walker.
Oh, yeah. Well, that set up the pass, no? I mean, the threat of Kenneth Walker, that helps you 100%. Immensely.
100%. I totally agree with that. I'm just like, people are, I've read that like, Thorne, all he had to do was complete 10 passes a game. And he was like, that's just not what happened. He set the school record for touchdown passes. So I just think it's just the extremes get so crazy. And, I'm not talking about you, but like other people that just act like this guy is terrible. And I'm a big, to a fault, probably a legacy guy. Like, people always ask me, like, why do you care? Why do you care about this from the past? Or why do you care about what we say about some guy that's not even here anymore? Like, I admit it's to a fault, but I do care about legacy. And I don't think Thorne, for whatever negativity may be there, deserves a bad legacy. And again, not talking about you, but he's treated as like this parasite that, was an accident. And he made some good plays in 21. I
think people don't realize there are schools in the Big Ten that would kill to have Peyton Thorne. I mean, Peyton Thorne is he going to the deep end with Auburn? And we could do, Auburn, but in a nutshell, offensive lines, okay, no wideouts. A heavy run game predicated against D lines that, LSU's, Georgia's, Alabama's, name the D line that like the top. I think there's like 4 of the top 10 D lines are in the SEC. It's going to be on Peyton Thorne's shoulders to win some of these games. And I don't. It's not the move I would have made, but money talks, right?
Well, yeah, I agree with everything you said pretty much. I mean, the one thing I'll say, for other people, and you nailed it, it's all relative. And that's a cliche, but it's true. Like, don't tell me somebody sucks when I can pull up all the traditional old school stats. I can pull up all the analytics. You can always say, use your eyeballs, but it's too subjective. Like, I'm also using my eyeballs, but I can't use that as I can't cite my eyeballs as data, like in an argument. You have to bring something objective. So believe me, I subjectively do use my eyeballs and make my decisions, not just based on numbers. I think we've gone too far overboard, especially in baseball. So that said, objectively speaking, you can't say a guy sucks when he's better than more than half the guys in the country on this level. He's just not. He did not suck, and he was exceptional objectively in 21. The Auburn thing fascinates me. I talked to Peyton at some length after his decision to transfer came public, although we already knew about it through Justin Thinn's great reporting. And, we didn't talk about Auburn's roster construction or anything like that, or what it's going to be like playing in the SEC. It was more talking about his experience at Michigan State, what he took some issues with some of the reporting going on, not from me, but from others in the space. And so we talked about that, but we mostly focused on how, I would say, I don't want to make him sound bad because it's not bad. He has a chip on his shoulder. I'll just put it that way. He feels that he's being slept on. He is very aware, this was made very clear, that the buzz was in 21, it was all Kenneth Walker. He had almost nothing to do with it, which I told him, to be fair, that I didn't buy, and I don't buy it. So, and he said, when I said that to him, I said, this whole myth that like you were just along for the ride. And he said, you're one of the few people that understands that. So he is very aware of all this kind of stuff and anything negative you just said, even something I may have slipped into the back door. I'm fascinated by him. I could do a whole episode on Peyton Thorne. I want to have
it's kind of like, if you remember back to when Tanner Morgan had that big year for Minnesota a couple of years back.
Yeah.
Who's he thrown to? Rashad Bateman and who else was the second wideout that got drafted really high? They had those two wideouts at Minnesota.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And what happened to Tanner Morgan after? Even with Mo Ibrahim, even with that running game, Terry Potts tearing up teams for 200 yards. Go look at what Tanner Morgan's numbers are. Go watch a Tanner Morgan dice up a secondary. You won't see it. And I think the overall thing I take is he was able to use a strong run game to his advantage. And I thought last year, yes, he was under duress. Does he force things? Does he hold the ball a bit too long? You can make the cases, but he's in all of college football. Yeah, he's a top 40 QB. And having a top 40 QB should put you in a position to be in a bowl game. That's the bottom line.
100% agree with everything you said. I don't know like who these quarterbacks are that don't have a lot of help. And I mean like elite help. Like, does Bryce Young have any good guys on that Bama team before he went to the league? CJ Stroud with his 5 NFL wide receivers at 1.2 years ago, and a running back that was a top 5 running back before he went down, and Trevion Henderson. Like, who are these quarterbacks that can do it on their own? And believe me, I'm not saying Peyton Thorne's those guys, but I don't like, if it wasn't for Kenneth Walker, it's like, I'd like to see the vast majority of
Caleb Williams might honestly be the only one.
Well, no,
I don't know. I think the USC
yeah, Jordan Addison, but
solid.
He had really good weapons too, though. But Jordan Addison being way up there among them. But Caleb Williams, I didn't say there were none. I said I asked how many.
Yeah. I think
there are a couple. But yeah, I mean, Caleb Williams is the Heisman Trophy winner and is the favorite to win again, is my understanding. If I checked. So yeah, and he's going to be unless he gets hurt.
Your boy Drake May have something to say about that.
I love Drake May. I'm biased as hell, though. I can't be taken seriously with these opinions. So I loved him like from the second I saw that it's beautiful ball he throws. It was love at first sight with that guy. I love that guy.
Quick digression into North Carolina football talk.
Yeah.
Drake May is so flippin' exciting, but that team might end up being the most aggravating team in the history of college football. And you share a degree, MSU, UNC, and I know you root for them because ACC is dumpster fire, so you can root for them.
Yep.
That might be the most aggravating team because you have this he's the best player to come through that school since LT. And possibly made me more.
I mean, Julius Peppers was a hell of a player.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, but no, I mean, yeah, I'm not nitpicking on you, man. I mean, he's unbelievable. And I think in most years this would be like the Drake May year, but Caleb Williams exists, and that's sports. Like sometimes you have one prominent guy, sometimes you have two. I think they're both going to be stars at the next level. I'm fascinated to see, like, this could be that next great kind of 1-2 debate that we tend to get, Winston Mariota and obviously Leaf Manning and stuff. And it usually works out that one guy's like a lot better than the other guy. It's rare that they both are great. We saw, RG3, Andrew Luck. I mean, this is kind of in that boat where it just feels like it's going to be those two guys and this is their season. And I'm really excited to see Drake May. I just like watching that guy play, man. I like him a little bit more between the ears than Caleb. As a lead, I don't like Caleb putting weird fingernails on and shit and like painting his nails or whatever the hell that was. I just don't like that clown car stuff. Like I don't want that out of my quarterback. I don't care if it's my receiver, but Drake May is more of a old soul, like old ass man soul type guy. And but I think they're both going to be unbelievable. It's not an anti Caleb take.
Probably gonna go 1-2. In some
100%, barring injury, I'd be shocked if it's not 1-2, and probably Caleb first.
Let's switch over to the defense, which even though you have some pieces you have to replace, this front seven, I feel this is like my sweet spot, my warm fuzzy feeling about this team. This front seven, I feel like, is what Coach Tucker's been trying to get after. I think the talent's there. I mean, they are deep, and they're going to be able to rotate bodies in. The linebacking core is probably 4 or 5 deep with usable players. I mean, Aaron Brule, who was like the star addition last year, he's going to be in the 2 deep. We get Windman back, who was electric last year. Big transfer, Tunmarise Adelaide. I probably messed that up.
Tunmise
Adelaide.
Yeah, he taught me that. It's funny because anytime it's a hard name, I'm always right in there coming on my show. I always like YouTube 5 different interviews and stuff, and they said his name like 4 different ways, and, like on legitimate networks and stuff. So I just when he got here, I'm just like, is it Tunmise or what the fuck is? But yeah, Tunmise Adelaide, great guy by the way.
I cannot wait to see him play because that is a guy I feel like could be a real disruptor on the inside. You have the big 300-pounders coming over from Colorado and Liberty. The outside is stacked with some talented DNs. I think they can get after the ball in a serious fashion, and maybe this defense keeps them afloat and really carries the season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think either side of the ball is even at their ceiling going to be so good that it can carry a bad unit on the other side. That's the thing with Michigan State, where we've seen years where in the D'Antonio era where the defense was so good it carried a bad offense. We saw in 21 a very good offense, Kenneth Walker, carry a really bad defense. That secondary was atrocious in 21, and they overcame. So I don't see that. Like, I don't see either unit being that good to where the other side of the ball can be abysmal. Certainly the special teams, by the way, like they literally lost a game because of special teams.
Yeah.
So I don't think, if their special teams are a clown car, I don't think they can overcome that either. But I will say you have to, if you're looking at the 3 units, splitting them off, you gotta like the defense the most, right? Which sounds maybe to some crazy because it's been terrible for the last couple of years. But you really not stole my thunder, but you brought the thunder that all the reasons why we should feel good about it is the talent in the front 7 and the depth of the front 7. I had Keith Nickel on my show a week or so ago, and he talked about, it's not about the ones versus the ones. He goes, like, almost in the Power 5, anybody's ones can hang with another team's ones. But it's when the guy rotating, like Ohio State's got 5 guys behind every guy that's really good. And, they have a couple of receivers out there, but they got 2 or 3 more on the bench that are going to be first round picks, at some point. So it's just, that's where it's really a difference. And we talked about on my show, Michigan State was so thin from a depth perspective. Just, they had guys out there that, I mean, honestly, there were 3 in particular. I'm not going to name them because that'd be mean. It's not their fault. But there were 3 guys that have played, not all at the same time, although at one point, yes. There were 3 guys out there at prominent snap counts last year at certain points that if you ask them at the beginning of the year, they didn't think they were ever going to play. Like these guys were kind of a step above Rudiger in terms of like, they were just kind of there to be there and good program guys. They never in a million years thought they were going to play, let alone critical snaps in the second quarter of these games that are close. So, I mean, if I have three guys that I'm using at different points that don't even belong out there, and then there were a couple other backups that are eventually going to be functional Big Ten players but weren't ready yet, I got 5 or 6 guys that don't really belong out there. That's so even if you get adequate, like legitimate fringe guys in those positions, it's such a difference. And I think we're going to see that this year. It would take a rash of bad luck unseen in my lifetime for them to ever be that thin again with this group. Especially particularly the front seven. I really like what I see from them, and on paper what I think they can be. They love Hazleton. I'm the last Hazleton fan, maybe. I love Scotty Hazleton. I've said it from the beginning. I think it's absurd the way people have talked about him. I think they should go back and read everything said about Pat Narduzzi. Hazleton could be bad this year, and it would just tie the amount of time that people wanted Pat Narduzzi dead. I mean, I was a student at the time. He was hated on the message boards, hated in the crowd at Spartan Stadium. He ended up being the best defensive coordinator in the history of this program. I mean, tough to argue. He had a second best defense in the country, a second best defense again, a fourth best defense. When have we done that? Outside of the 50s maybe. So I just be very careful what you wish for. I don't know what defensive coordinator out there is going to have a unit with 3 guys that don't belong there looking competent. It's just not going to happen. No one can.
So I guess the leash is you still got room on the leash for Hazleton, even if it's a less than stellar. I personally, I feel like this is the defense that he's been trying to build to, at least in the front seven. The secondary, it's I still feel like they're sorting it out.
I respect the pushback that you or anyone else has, because the results are the results. I get it. Like, yeah. I get frustrated with Tiger fans that are like, there's 100 reasons why it's okay to be bad. I get that. I empathize with that. I get it. There's so many factors here. You have to look at this cupboard as bare as it was in reality. And we saw this with Michigan.
People don't realize that, Justin. Honest to God, it's like they forget what they, and God bless him, he needs a statue. He deserves one. Greatest coach in the history of the program. However, when he left, it was Indian in the cupboard. Okay, like there's nothing in there. Like, you've got a 2-star from Ishpeming starting for you, guys. They had at least 50 transfers out, but I think only like 3 of them went to D1 schools. Like, I mean, come on now.
There's no transfer that left. Like what's Hunter Rison doing? There's no transfer that left that like lit it up anywhere. Not one. I mean, am I forgetting somebody? They didn't have one guy that left that was like, oh my God, he's on the watch list for this award.
Quite a few just left football.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, they went and they're working on their sociology degree or something. There was no exodus of talent, and there was no influx of talent, and that's just the reality of the situation. I said when Mel Tucker was hired that 2024 is when it's go time, not win the national title, but like no more of this. Oh, come on, give him a chance, shit. So I still had to give this whole operation another year. Justin Thind, who should have been retained by the Athletic. I mean, he wasn't fired. It was like a temp contract and it lapsed. But, he had a great breakdown with the Minnesota thing last year where he was defending Scotty Hazleton. He and I are the only two. And I like Hazleton even more than he does. But he broke down the situation where, everyone's saying bend but don't break, and you're playing too close, or you're playing too far off the line. You got to jam them. And he broke down, it was like 2 or 3 plays where Hazleton finally was like, okay, like, I hear you. Not that he was listening to the fans, but he saw what we saw. But these guys got burned all 3 times. I mean, it was either 2 or 3 plays. The second he tried to jam, because he knew, Hazleton knew that the guys weren't capable of jamming the line and staying on the guy's hip. I mean, he knew better, and it wasn't his fault. It didn't matter what he did. It was the definition of a damned if you do, damned if you don't.
I do remember that show, and you might just have to bring that back as a short, that whole section, because it was pretty.
Yeah,
Justin is woefully underpaid.
Yeah,
but I do. Yeah,
I was
go
going to
ahead.
say he's an engineer. He's making money. He's making a ton of money in his day job. He's underpaid in this space, though.
Yes, that is 100% the case. Yeah, overall, we go into this season, we're looking at the schedule, and like we were talking off air, it varies. Some folks have it as the second hardest schedule. You said fourth. I've seen eighth, 15th. I mean, I don't know what metrics we're gauging by, but when you have Washington, Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan on your schedule, that's not great, Bob.
No, that Washington game to me, and my producer Ben, I love you, Ben, and he's a fan of me somehow, some way. So he'll probably be watching this at some point. So I love you, Ben. But Ben thought this was insane of me. And I'll throw this back to you. I'll play the host for a second.
Yeah.
We ended up finding out afterwards the look ahead line is 10.5 for that Washington game, which I think
it's gone up, I think, right?
Well, this conversation was like 10 days ago and it was 10.5. Maybe it's gone up. I saw 10.5. The look ahead lines are always tough. Who knows? So much can happen. But the West Coast to East Coast to West Coast thing is such a trap. Michigan State to Oregon, Oregon to Michigan State, Michigan, you can argue Arizona State came and beat us, which they did. That was a joke of a game. That was a clown car end of the game situation. Michigan State outgained them, out first down them. They dominated the game and lost. Cross country, it's not a perfect science. It typically doesn't go great. And one of the very few exceptions is when Oregon, shockingly, without Thibodeau, by the way, popped Ohio State and Columbus a couple years ago. Second game of the year, but definitely the first month. So, I'm not saying, I'm banking the whole thing on this, but we have a long track record of that being a difficult spot in either direction, west, east, west. So if you're going to grant me that we'll probably see victories for Michigan State in those first few games, is that is that a fair assumption that they're going to beat? Central, Richmond? Do I have that right? Let me pull it back up.
Yeah, Central's horrific, but yes, they'll beat
and
Central, and Richmond is
And Washington's the third. Is Washington the third game or the fourth game? I think it's the third. Yeah. So that's a big swing game for this whole thing. If they're 3-0, Maryland's not expected to be that great. At Iowa sucks. Kinnick is a beast, but it's a winnable game. I'm not
I will say, and we forget this, and I forgot it. Cade McNamara is now their QB, and we both know what Cade McNamara is, and in that offense, I think he can throw the ball more than 4 yards per attempt. He's not what they had last year. I think he's not competent.
No, and they're, you have to bank on the track record a little bit. We all make fun of them, and rightfully so. It's like it's an embarrassing offense historically, over the years. But that's an 8-9 win program most years. So I respect Iowa, especially at Kinnick. So I'm not chalking it up as a win. I'm just saying it's not some automatic L. But let's say I treat it
as an up in the air game.
Well, I'm even willing to call it an L. But yeah, I agree with you. It should be. But if I have to pick, let's call it a loss. But the Washington game, if you win that, you're 3-0. Maryland at home, very, very winnable game. Now you're 4-0. I'll give you the loss to Iowa. You're 4-1. At Rutgers, road game, Big Ten. Rutgers typically hits you hard and they play hard, and that's their whole brand.
The shy is not easy.
But I'm not calling it a win. But if I had a gun in my head, I'm taking Michigan State. And especially in this hypothetical, you got to remember, in this hypothetical, they're 4-1. So in this hypothetical, they're obviously at least a solid team because they're 4-1 for a reason. So, and I'm coming off, a loss at Iowa in the situation where typically you get the bounce back thing and all that nonsense. So this team could theoretically, and I don't think it's crazy, I would actually predict it to happen. I think they will be 5-1 going into Michigan if they win that Washington game. So to me, this Washington game, so much is on that. So it seems like such a great pivot point. I don't think this will be a disaster, calamitous year either way, even if they lose that game. But if you're 5-1 and Michigan's coming to you, that game's going to have juice. I don't want to hear about, oh, we have no shot or how great Michigan is, because we've heard that how many times in years Michigan State ended up winning anyway. So yeah, Michigan would be a rightful favorite. I would pick Michigan to win if my kid's life's dependent on it. I'm not like predicting otherwise. I'm just saying, even if you lose that game, like if they're 5-2, 7 games into this thing, that's like a pretty good first 7, right? And
I'll say the Washington game is and I think you identified it perfectly, because this Washington team is legit. Defensively, it's a Pac-10 defense, Pac-12 defense, whatever the hell it is now. Not for long, right? But the defense is exploitable. However, those offenses are high-powered, and we have yet to see a high-powered offense fail against a Michigan State defense under the Tucker tenure. If you're going to beat Washington and you're going to beat that offense, that tells me, A, your offense is clicking. You got it. It is competent. Whoever's running quarterback is going to be serviceable. We're talking more about like what we outlined, what you said earlier about what that successful season looks like. It means the run game's clicking, and it means this defense is able to get some pressure, and the corners are able to at least hold their ground, which if we see that in the Washington game, I think then we can start talking, well, Michigan at home, maybe that's winnable. Maybe that is a winnable game. And maybe Penn State is winnable. Ohio State, I'm not a Kyle McCord guy, and I'm not a Jason Day guy either. And maybe it is a winnable, maybe it's a competitive game, right? I can't say it's winnable because we've outscored by like 130 last 2 years, but if everything goes right in the Washington game, but it's still, to me, I've already bet Washington when the line opened before the Peyton Thorne, because the line was just horrible.
What do you have?
I had it at 7.5 when it opened up.
Gotcha.
And then when Thorne transferred, it went to 10.5. And then I doubled down. It is a lot to ask for brand new pieces. It will be the biggest, I think, it'll be the biggest point of Tucker's tenure if he's able to win that game. That will be a change program direction, immediately lift up, because you're right. If you beat them, Iowa's attainable, Maryland's attainable, Indiana, Rutgers, Nebraska. We can go down the list, and now this is a 7-8 win team, maybe possibly even 9-win team, and now that recruiting pumps up, everything follows. It's a big game if you're a Spartan.
I mean, we respect what Washington did last year, not just to us, but on the whole, they finished AP top 10.
Husky Stadium's not easy to play in.
It's not, but I mean, they lost. What they played last year? I mean, not kind of the bowl game, neutral site. Like, would they play 5? I think they went 3-2 on the road. They played 5. I'll pull them back up. I'm pretty sure they. I know they lost 2 road games back to back.
I thought they lost. Didn't they lose to Oregon State?
Worse, they actually beat Oregon State. The Oregon State game was like barely, though. They barely beat them, but Oregon State wasn't bad. They won, like, they were 9-3, I think. They lost to Arizona State, who was 3-9. I mean, Arizona State was, by all the metrics, one of the 10 worst teams in the whole country last year. They and it wasn't like a fluke, like pick 6 at the end or something weird. Like, it wasn't a blowout. I think they won by 8 or something. But Arizona State deserved to win that game. This team on the road, as much as we all were doing cartwheels for them last year, and those were 2 West Coast games, by the way, not even East Coast games. On the road, kind of shaky. They, UCLA was 9-3, with a garbage schedule. Not a great team.
So this is their road victories. at California. California is horrific. Did go to Autzen and beat Oregon 37-34.
But look at that, I pulled
and
up.
at
I mean, look
Washington
at that.
State. The Arizona State game, you are right. There is no excuse to lose at home or on the road to Arizona State.
California,
even with their extra COVID practices.
California is terrible. They went 4-8 and they barely beat them. They won by it was a one-score game. I'm just saying, like, we saw this team that we all think is so great on the West Coast lose to a 3-9 team and a non-fluke loss. They just got beat. We saw them barely eke out a win against a 4-8 team. This was all West Coast stuff. That they're shaky, man. They had one horrifying loss on the road. They only played 5 road games. They had a horrifying loss, another loss where they were the better team, and UCLA was solid. They weren't great. 9-3 in the Pac-10, which I will always call it, by the way. I'm got news for you. It's not that great. Like, if you're worse than 9-3, you're doing some stuff wrong. They all have 5 wins built in so whatever. I digress. That was like a great year for them, and I saw them be very shaky, 3-2 with some close escapes against bad teams. Washington at home, hell of a spot. That's tough. I ain't scared of them. I'm not saying that like, I think I'm guaranteeing a win. I have no idea who's going to be taking the snaps in East Lansing this year. So that's what it goes back to. No one should be confident.
Key game. It's the key game on the schedule.
Well, it's the key game, but I'm not afraid of it though. Like it's a night game kind of. I mean, it's a 5:00 kick, right? But I think no one's, even Spartan fans are, and you're one of them, are like, like that's probably a loss. I don't buy that. I've been watching a lot of football in my lifetime, man. The coast thing is real. And it's not just the outcome of these games; it's how they look. Even when Arizona State beat us going west to east in the rematch, Michigan State, as bad and shaky as they were, pull up the box score. Like, if Michigan State outplayed them, a lot more first downs, a lot more yardage. That was garbage. So, and sometimes you can play like shit and win. It's not about that, but we've seen in my last 5 years of thinking about this, I can only think of that one exception where Oregon came into Columbus and punched them. That was a legitimate exception and shocking. But other than that, it's mostly bad performances going coast to coast. I don't think they're that great to begin with. I think they're good. I don't think they're that great. Arizona State last year is far worse than what Michigan State will be this year. There's no way. I think they had, like, in the Sagarin, they were like 117 out of 121 or something like that. I mean, they were horrifying. Michigan State's not going to be that bad this year. So everyone needs to calm down with like okay, Washington lost. I don't buy that. And if they win that game, again, 3-0, very possible to go 5-1 into the Michigan week. And this whole thing is, even if you lose Michigan, this whole season is different. So yeah, I repeat myself, but that Washington game, I think we're going to know very early what the season is going to be. Is it going to be a middling 6-7 win outfit, or perhaps more? So I'm excited. I'll be at that game. I got to make a point to be there.
I'm going to be in my den, doors locked, family is sent away, and phone is turned off, and I will be I don't know, probably just chugging bourbon. So yeah, just a normal, perfectly healthy football experience. It'll be great.
Yeah, you should see my tweet from the Baylor game. I don't know if you saw that earlier tonight, but
no. I saw a little throwback to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Baylor game was going around. The Sparty Dunk guy, likes to throw clips up every now and then. It's always fun to check those out. But I quote tweeted. I had forgotten it popped up when I was looking back at the plays today in the game. When we recovered the onside kick, I'm shown on screen, and I'm looking like I'm clapping, but I'm just miserable because I always think it's going to go wrong for us. And all the Michigan State fans around me are like, yeah, like they're like thanking the heavens, and I'm just kind of golf clapping, looking like I'm gonna die.
You're dead inside. You are dying inside.
Did you pull it up? I mean, yeah, if you see it,
I saw the picture. The guy in front of you is going wild, and you're just like,
he was too far the other way. Like, he was acting like the game was over and we won or something. That was me when Langford broke free to go up 10 against Ohio State in 2013.
I wish I could be one of those fans. I wish I could be. Because like in these big games, I'm dying inside. It is 60 minutes of death.
Oh yeah, I don't enjoy sports. I mean,
Oh, I hate it.
I don't know like who actually likes this stuff. I don't even know what I'm doing here, honestly. I at no point, unless it's a blowout, it's not even fun. And I've seen my teams be blowing a team out and lose anyway. So it's like even then it's not that fun. If I'm not up by 50 in the fourth quarter, I'm still like worried about how I'm gonna blow it.
Next week on Spiro Avenue show, cucumber lattices. Your thoughts. That's what we'll get into. Hey, I love the Michigan State talk. I can't let you go without talking about our favorite baseball player of all time. One of the most, I mean, for the folks that do listen to this show, I know we got a lot of baseball fans out there. Our Orioles shows, we have the Orioles, one of the Orioles beat writers on.
Must be nice.
Oh, it's fun. They're a fun team to watch.
20 games above 500. It's not my life.
Yeah, no.
I got problems.
Future Hall of Famer, just incredible signing. Javi Baez. How much do you like him? How many more years do you wish he was here? Your thoughts.
I can't get enough of him. I hope he never leaves. And there's degrees of frustration as a sports fan, and there's different manifestations of these frustrations, and there's levels. And I think that's an overused phrase, but it's true, particularly in this case. No fan of any team enjoys when their team underperforms or loses, when an individual player underperforms or it's just not what we thought they could be. Nobody enjoys that. So that goes without saying. But the reason there's two reasons why Baez is particularly infuriating. And this is where you get into the more extreme degrees of fan frustration. Point number one, I didn't want him here to begin with. I'm on tape on my show with Chris Castellani and other guest Tony Paul saying explicitly when we're talking about, which of the 5 shortstops, he was last on my list. I said multiple times, I shared the clips. I didn't want the guy.
You weren't the only one too. Like there's some smart people in Detroit. I know Valeni was on it and you were on it.
And I mean, and Chris agreed with me, by the way, in one of the clips I'm referring to. So Chris is on the, so I think we all agreed, including Valeni, that I would take him over nobody because, no one saw him being this bad. But like, if we're going to spend money, just anybody but him, he was my last pick, like a distant last pick. So when you're talking about how much do you hate a player or how much, where does he rank on the pariah list or whatever, to me personally, I find it a lot more annoying and frustrating when I see something not working out in advance. Like when I know before it even happens and the second it does happen, I double down that it's not going to work. To me, that's infinitely more frustrating than somebody like Darko, who was the consensus number 2 pick. I liked him, but I was like in high school. What the hell did I know? But he was in the league, the consensus number 2 pick. And that was the right thing to do, quote unquote, with all the information we had. So yeah, it sucked that Darko was bad and it haunts us that Darko was bad, but at least I can say we weren't rolling our eyes at the time. So that's why Baez is Darko like it's draft versus free agent bust, but like, is Darko a bigger bust? Like, sure, of course. But I find Baez infinitely more infuriating because I knew it in advance. The second factor, which is a distant second, but still matters to me and to some people, I know Chris does, I care about this stuff too, is the attitude. And Chris, I have to give him full credit. He made a great comparison. He said Jordan Zimmerman, who I have argued for a while now is the worst contract in the history of Detroit sports. Even if you disagree, he's certainly top 5 by any measure. Zimmerman actually cared, and he just didn't have it. He had one good month, April of his first year. He was electric. He won an American League Pitcher of the Month, I believe, or Player of the Month, whatever it was. It was terrible after that. But at no point did Zimmerman not approach this game with professionalism. At no point did we ever sense that he wasn't giving it his all, that he cared. Baez is dancing on the field. He's heckling with fans, telling him how rich he is when they're telling him he's terrible. I don't know if you saw that TikTok. I wasn't able to track it down yet. Yeah, it's just like, that to me is infinitely more frustrating. So like, we all know he's bad. I know he had a nice game today and good for him. I mean, he's more than due, but I find him infuriating and frustrating on a personal level, the way Jordan Zimmerman, who was equally bad performance-wise and dollar for dollar-wise, wasn't. And I find him infuriating from a hindsight level where, like, this to me, no, I didn't see him being this bad, but I saw him being way below what he was paid and what he was going to be asked and expected to do. And to that degree, I detest him. And I can only say that about in my lifetime, not now. I mean, in my lifetime, I can only say that about 4 or 5 athletes in town for the Detroit sports teams. It's a very, very short list, and he's on there.
Chris Castellani did a really good, like, just in terms, where does Javi rank for all eligible batters? He that's up on his Twitter. If you want to go check it out, you can probably still find it. And it's literally at the bottom of eligible hitters in terms of some of the most important stats you can get, besides OPS, all the other sabermetrics that highlight, balls in play and what was it, WRC plus or whatever. I don't even know what the names of these things are.
It doesn't matter. Pick the metric and he's bad at. I mean, I tweeted out he had, and I had like manually searched this, which was a treat. He has the 8th worst OPS in the last like 15 years, almost since 2010. And the other guys on the list, there's 7 worse than him. 6 made that year, the year that they sucked, no money. The only guy on there that was like a well-paid guy was Chris Davis.
Yeah.
Great, you're a Baltimore audience here for some people. I mean, Chris Davis made in 2018, he was paid $17 million a year, and his OPS was 534, 539.
He went on that streak of like
0 for 68 or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, but here's the thing. Is it and that was, to me, that was worse, even though Baez, even adjusted for inflation, is paid a little bit more. I mean, he's paid $5 million more, but it's a little bit even with the adjustment. But even then, Chris Davis didn't check the other box that I mentioned earlier. Chris Davis was so embarrassed and you felt bad for the guy. Baez has no shame. So, but I just put in perspective. Yes, Baez has the 8th worst OPS among qualifiers in a decade and a half, which is atrocious by any measure. But when 6 of the guys worse are guys that some of them were making like Darwin Barney for the Dodgers was making $540,000 a year.
How dare you talk about Chicago Cub great Darwin Barney?
I'm just saying, 6 of the other 7 guys were not paid any money. So it's like the only reason they were there is because there was either an injury and had enough at-bats to qualify. There was either an injury and they were forced into action, or the team was just terrible. The bottom line is, based on their salary, they were all on 1-year deals making no money. No one expected them to be good. So if you put it in that perspective, and I didn't even go farther back than 2010. It got pretty late. I'm not saying it doesn't go back farther, but for the last decade and a half, I would argue this is 1A and 1B with Chris Davis, the worst performance dollar for dollar that we've seen. This is the worst hitter in 15 years. If you take out the guys that were making $500,000 a year, 1.4, that's what we're talking about. So these people that want to defend this or say, oh, Javi Mago, you take the bad with the good. No, he's in the big leagues. Everybody on the planet in the history of this game, if you have enough at-bats, is going to have some good. We're so far beyond, take the good with the bad. Like, stop that. Stop. This is one of the worst performances in the history of this sport. When you factor in the salary, it's bottom 5 in my lifetime. Yeah, he could get hot in the second half. It'd be pretty hollow. Like, where was this all year? We could be 3 games up in the division if you weren't objectively horrible. But I'm not saying he can't salvage this a little bit, but who cares? Like, even if he gets up to a 700 OPS, which I'd be pretty surprised.
I mean,
that's still terrible.
That would be an incredible second half.
But it's so horrible though. For that, I can sign that any day. Those guys are rolling out of bed. 700. It's a below average. 730 is like kind of the typically understood. It does change year to year, but 730 is like the rough estimate for average. So I'm going a third of a point below average for $22 million a year. This was my marquee signing. I'm tired of it. And it's the same thing with Torkelson, who, God bless him, he hit 2 home runs off a bum tonight. And this is what always happens. He goes and cranks the Rockies' terrible pitching in the high altitude. Like, go find the pitchers that guy's homered off of. He never squares up anybody worth a damn, ever. It's always some scrub. And I still like Torque. This is not like Baez. Is
there a hope with? I have one more question about Baez, but
yeah,
because you bring up Torque,
You got me going on Baez. Sorry, I'm mad.
No, I know
hate
it. I
that
mean, he's our favorite player.
I detest him.
Torque just feels like maybe in 2 or 3 years he's the guy. He's not going to be the superstar we drafted him to be, but can he be a serviceable, usable starter for this team, a la Nick Castellanos ish? When Castellanos was pretty solid, like hitting 275, 280, had some pop.
Castellanos is kind of underrated.
He was for the Tigers. He was,
yeah,
but
like people act like he was like bad in Detroit or something. It's weird to me. But I mean, Castellanos, that
ish.
would you I'm wondering, I'm not pushing back. I'm like kind of thinking this, I'm working this out in my own head because I've never thought about it in like the Castellanos terms. But like, would we take Castellanos? What was his OPS like strictly as a Tiger, like throughout his career? Like around 800, maybe? I'm guessing.
Maybe in
7.
Torts at what? You got to figure a shade under 700, so 680.
Well, this year he went over 7, I'm sure, with the 2 homers today. But he was like exactly 700 coming into today, and he homered a couple times. So, but I'm talking like for career, because he sucked last year. I mean, he's still like what, in the 6s somewhere.
Well, rookie season, right?
I'm counting Castellanos rookie year. I don't think why is Torkelson exempt? I don't understand. Like, I mean, he's the first overall pick. I'm sorry, we're not talking about some like 3rd round high school project. When you're the first person in your demographic ever taken first overall, ever. Whether you look at the right-handed side of the first baseman thing, the right-hand thing, who really gives a shit? I don't even care. I never understood that. Oh, the first lefty to do this, who gives a shit? But what does matter is he's the first college first baseman in the history of the draft ever taken. That matters. Adrian Gonzalez, really, like one of these guys was a DH primarily in New York in the 70s. Like Adrian Gonzalez is really the only other time this happened, and he was a prep first baseman rather in 2000. So I'm sorry, like I'm not discounting. I'm not giving him 5 years. Like you were drafted. Go back, and I've shared this on my Twitter a couple times. Go back and just watch the clip on YouTube of when they drafted him, when they're talking about, because everyone knew he was going probably. The 2 minutes before he gets drafted and the 2 to 3, 4 minutes after. They were saying that this guy could hit right now, that he could go into a big league lineup. He could take his tie off, get off the couch with his family, and go hit tomorrow. Like he could be in the lineup tonight.
I think they said the same thing about Dylan Cruz on draft night too.
Yeah, a little different. Cruz more of a, contact guy. They're hoping for some power later. But yeah, same kind of thing. But even I mean, Torkelson was considered a better hitter, just pure hitter. Cruz may be a better prospect, you could argue, because of the position stuff. But and he can run faster than Torque's fat legs. But it's a knock on top. I don't care if my first baseman can run. Who can? But I'm sorry. I don't get why do I have to like constantly settle here? So I don't, and again, I'm going on a rant again. And I actually like Torque. It's not personal with Torque. Torque is on the list of, 99% of other athletes I'm disappointed in, but it's not personal. With Baez, it's actually kind of personal. Like that guy bothers me on a personal level. But Torkelson, I don't understand. This fan base does not seem to get it, where they want to yell at Chris or yell at me or yell at anybody that is even citing statistics about this guy to put it in context.
I want to yell at Al. The worst GM in Detroit history, probably.
Yeah, the only other one you could put up there is Millen. And I always argued, like, what did Millen squander? Like Millen took over a team that has never done anything ever and just continued to do nothing. Like
and if you look at the Charles Rogers pick, just horrific luck. The Kevin Jones injury.
Yeah. Rogers was the right pick, by the way. But I mean, there was a case for Andre Johnson, actually, to be fair. But the only argument really was based on the character stuff and if it's wise to keep a kid home with those issues. That's a legitimate argument. But like strictly as a pro prospect, Chuck was the guy there in that spot, in my opinion. I mean, what's that? The Texans year when they took Carr, I mean, they weren't going to take him. So anyway, sorry, go ahead. Rogers was the best prospect in that draft.
Yeah, agreed. Last question. And shout out Chuck. Okay, you're Scott Harris for the day. What do we do with Baez? Because I know Valenti approached the idea of just DFA him. because Andy Ibanez or Isaiah Pacheco or Wenzel Perez or the corpse of Don Kelly could possibly be better and more productive statistically. What do? Do you keep playing them? Do you sit them? Do you DFA them?
I would try to find the exit. I would. There's different, we say, oh, no one will ever give up a dime of their money, but guys have done that before to get out of situations. We just saw in a different sport with Zadina with the Red Wings. Now it wasn't, he gave up like $2.5 million, which is a lot, but it's not the kind of sums we're talking about bias. So I do think there is a possibility, however unlikely, that you could get Baez to agree to some kind of a buyout, and but you're going to have to pay most of it. But you can make it a little more palatable if you get that number down to where I'm paying them 16 to walk away instead of 22. It's easier, especially when their payroll sucks anyway. It's so below. It's 35 million below league average even before Cabrera falls off. What a joke! This was so unnecessary. So I think you have to have a conversation with Baez and his rep and just say. You said if I'm Scott Harris, I sit him down and I say, like, what do you guys want? You don't seem happy here. There's whispers that he's not thrilled to be here. I can't imagine he would be. He doesn't seem like he's having a good time. What is there something we can do? I would kind of put it in their court. If he says, no, I'm good. Like, we're good. Status quo. I'm rocking. Like, you find no semblance of a notion that he wants to be a willing participant and give even a little bit to help facilitate an exit. If that's the case, it becomes harder because he's not going to opt out. I mean, I have a bet, and my buddy yesterday, 2 days ago, was saying, oh yeah, but he opts out. He's miserable. Look at the guy. It's like, who's going to pay this guy? What is it? 96 million for 4 years? He's not going to get that. Now, teams are dumb. If he has a Manny Ramirez in LA second half or something, teams are dumb and there's a lot of money flying around. I'm not completely ruling it out, but I think we can say it'd be a pretty big shock if he opted out. So I don't know. I think you're stuck with him. You could DFA him, but what's the point? Like, is it just because no one's going to claim him? Are you just trying to, and I heard a bit of Valenti. Valenti seems to be, correct me if I'm wrong, coming at this like let's make him miserable on purpose and then he'll want to leave. I'm not even saying it's a bad idea, but that's why this sucks. There's no answer I could give you that's good, right? There's no good option. But the first step is to call him and his representation and just say, hey, where are you at with this? Because guys do give up some money and he's going to recoup some of it when he resigns somewhere. I would try to get out of it, though. That's the short answer. I'm trying to find the exit, and it's just about where that mitigation is. Am I paying him 16 a year to walk away? Am I paying him 19? I wouldn't pay his full freight to go away because why do that? You're better off just keeping him, hope he has a hot month, and then you can unload him. Like, they have to recoup something to get rid of him. I wouldn't just give him away. Like in terms of like letting him walk. If someone wants to take his contract, then great. But I'm not going to like pay him to like his full freight to leave. I want to save a couple million if I'm the Tigers, but that's just me. But good luck offloading that contract. You're going to have to pay him a lot of money. I think he's going to just be here. I think he's just going to be here, but we'll see.
I can't wait. I can't wait to see him slider into the left-handed batter's box. That's a little tip for all the MLB pitchers listening. Just why does that guy see fastballs ever? Especially, I mean, he rarely does in those 2 strike counts when he's down in the count, which is almost always. I mean, when was the last time he got a fastball in that situation? He just slider away.
Yep.
That's really all you need there. Justin, thank you for staying up late with me. Amazing conversation. We always go way over time. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back later this week, but until then, take care, brush your hair, check out the Spiro Avenue show, and as always, we'll see you after a while.